Welcome to another coding tutorial, and in today's video, I'm going to show you how to create this pastel gradient screensaver. I've done a few tutorials on how to create a gradient using the P5 built-in function lerp_color that allows you to blend two colors, which is super useful when you're calculating in between values like for animations or smooth transitions. The P5 library has functions that take care of most of the drawing basics for you, things like drawing shapes, filling in colors, creating animations, so you can start making things without having to think about how all of that is implemented behind the scenes. But sometimes there might be things that you might want to do but are not already being built into the library. One example is the ability to fill in a shape with a smooth gradient. There's no fill gradients function or a native way to make a circle that fades from solid in the center to transparent in the edges. If you have tried to create a glowing particle or a soft spotlight, you have already hit this limitation. So in today's video, I'm going to show you exactly how to do that by accessing the underlying HTML5 canvas API, which is the drawing layer that p5.js is built on top of, a lower level set of tools provided by the browser itself. And by reaching into it, we're going to be able to create the radial gradient as well as control the transparency. But the main goal is not just to create this nice gradient effect, but actually to pull back the curtain a little bit so you can see what is underneath the hood, so you can see what is possible beyond the P5 surface. So the HTML5 canvas API that I just mentioned that we're going to access is actually called the Canvas Rendering Context 2D. It is the interface part of the Canvas API that provides the 2D rendering context for the drawing surface of a canvas element. It is used for drawing shapes, text, images, and other objects. But P5 actually has a system variable called drawing context that provides direct access to this sketch canvas, which is the Canvas Rendering Context 2D that we just saw. So that's how we're going to access it. So if you look at the example here, let's come down to this second one, because basically we're going to be copying most of the code here. So we're going to first declare drawing context and set it to a variable that we want. And then we're going to be using the method called createRadialGradient. And then we're going to be using another method called addColorStop. And I'm going to show you how to do that through reading the documentation and then implementing it on our sketch. So how about we start by first declare a variable. I'm going to call it ctx for context. And then we're going to set context to the system variable drawing context. All right. And then inside draw, actually before we do that, I'm going to declare a few more variables to create an ellipse or a circle. How about we do x and y and then radius r, and I'm going to set it to 150. And then for x, I'm going to set it at width divided by 2, and y will be height divided by 2. And then we're going to just use the ellipse function to draw out our circle. This is just the normal way that we usually draw an ellipse. Oops, radius. All right, I'm also going to put in no stroke. Now, to create the radial gradient, we need to use the method called createRadialGradient. So let's look at their documentation. Let's find radial gradient. Okay. So this is a method of the Canvas 2D API that creates a radial gradient using the size and coordinates of two circles. So let's look at the syntax. So we need a total of 6 arguments, right? And we need what? The x-axis coordinate of the start circle, the y-axis coordinate of the start circle, so x and y, and then the radius of the start circle, and then the same thing for the end circle. So how we're going to do it actually is we're going to, okay, I'm going to actually copy this. We're going to set a variable inside draw here, call it gradient, and we're going to set it to ctx, which is drawing context dot this method, right? And for the start circle, it's going to be x and y values that we already declared here, but the radius will be 0. So we want to start it at the middle point of the circle, and then it's going to still be the same coordinate for the end circle, but then the radius here will be radius value that we have declared. And if I click run now, you should expect nothing to happen because we have not used gradient here yet. But to use it, first we need to use another method. This method is called, let's come down here. Okay, it's called add color stop. So actually, let's go look at that. Add color stop method here. It is a method within the canvas gradient class that adds a new color stop defined by an offset and a color to a given canvas gradient. So we have the gradient value that we already declared, right? So basically we just need offset and color. How about we look at this? The parameter offset is a number between 0 and 1 inclusive, representing the position of the color stop. 0 represents the start of the gradient, and then 1 represents the end. And if we come down here, basically right now they have set the drawing context to this create linear gradient, which is different from ours. Ours is radial, right? But the logic should be the same. And then we just put in gradient and then add this method and put in offset between 0 and 1 and then the color. So how about we just copy these 4 and yes, let's click run. All right, so now we have 3 colors. If I don't put in this line of code here, nothing happens, right? So this is the method that fills in the value, the color gradient here. And as you can see, we have the color green, white, and pink. And if I do, actually, let's comment this one out first. So now we have just 2 colors, green and pink, where it's like the most green in the center and then the most pink at the outer edge, right? But then at the 50% point, it blends the 2 colors. And let's try this. If I put 0.5 here, what will happen? Okay, so I guess it blends at 0.25 here between green and pink, right? So I'm gonna bring it back to 1 and then we add white here. Ta-da! All right, but actually the way that we're gonna be creating the glowing effect is actually by introducing this color with an alpha value or the transparency. So let me show you. But to do that, the syntax is different. So I'm actually going to comment this out. What we're gonna do first is, how about I declare C for color, and then it is going to be, let's do the color red. And then we're going to access the red, green, and blue values inside this color. So what we're gonna do is I'm going to set R to be equals to red of C, and then G to be equals to green of C, and then same thing for blue. All right, and then the syntax is gradient dot add color stop, right? We're gonna start at 0 also, but instead of putting in green like this, the syntax that we need to use is this sign here, which is the sign below the escape button, and then RGBA for red, green, blue, and alpha, parentheses, then we want $, and then this curly bracket for R, same thing for G, and then same thing for B. And then the last value is the alpha value, and to get the glowing effect, we're gonna put in 1, which is full transparency, no, fully opaque. And let's just click run to see what happens. All right, so everything is all opaque. We just put in 1 color, but what we want to do now is we're gonna copy this, and then we're gonna put in 1, and we're gonna put in no transparency. So basically, guess what's gonna happen? It gives this glowing effect, right? Which means that it is fully opaque at the middle here and then slowly become transparent. But we use the same exact color, so we see this glowing effect towards the end of the shape. And that's exactly how we're going to do it. We're going to actually write another function now. And I'm going to call this function get pastel color. And we're going to set R to be a random value between 150 and 255. And same thing for G and B. And then we're going to return C, but we need to set C to be equals to color of R, G, and B. All right. And instead of setting C here, I'm going to delete this. And then let's set C here. And then we're going to call the get pastel color at the setup so we get one color. Let's try it. All right. If I put the background to white, you might be able to see it better. Ta-da! Done. All right. But now, how are we going to get those nice animated gradient screensaver? Now we're stepping into our familiar territory. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a circle class. So let's come to this arrow here, click the plus sign, click create file, circle.js, and then let's reference the file by going to index.html. All right, and then let's put the name of our file, circle.js. Okay, so class circle, constructor, function, update, and display. Basically, we're gonna be creating a bunch of these circles that move around the screen. And so when we have a bunch of these glowing circles that are overlapping with each other, we get the effect that we want. So I'm going to start with just one circle. So how about we do this.x equals to, actually let's make it a vector. So this.pose will be create vector of x and y. So a vector is an object that can hold 2 to 3 values, and we're going to use it to hold 2 values, which is the position and also the velocity of these balls. So x and y will be the parameters, and then we're going to have vel. We're going to start vel at, we're going to create a random speed for these circles. So let's do p5.vector dot random, random 2D. And this is going to give us a vector with a magnitude of 1, but at a random direction. So we also want to multiply it by a random speed, maybe. So let's do, how about 2 to 5? We can change this later. And then inside update, what we need is we need to use this.pose.add. So we want to add the velocity to our position. This will allow us to update the position of the ball. And then if we go back to all of this, this is how we're going to be creating or displaying the balls, right? So let's just copy these. All right. Okay, we can come back to these later. And yes, okay, I'm actually going to put the pastel color as the method inside the circle class too. And maybe we can set this .c here. And yes, let's copy all of this and put it inside the constructor function. So now we need this dot for all of these. We don't need these. Okay, gradient is x and y here will be this.pose.x, right? And then this.pose.y Same thing for the second one. Oh, and we need radius as well. So this dot radius will also be our parameter here. And we need to change here. Okay. This has to be this dot C. RGB gradient here is correct. Radius, and then this is this dot pose dot x, and then this dot pose dot y. All right, I think that is it. And this is get pastel, which will be inside the class, which is inside here. All right. All right, let's create one of these glowing ball object. Save. All right, let's go back. Okay, let's do circle is a new, oops, circle, actually, let's do ball. There's a new circle object at xy. Let's do width divided by 2 and height divided by 2 again, and then the size of 150. And then let's do ball dot. Actually, let's just display it first, just to make sure. Ooh, it's not a valid color. Let's go back. Maybe we just do return here. Okay, so I'm basically setting this .c to this function here, and then inside the method, we basically just want to return the color value. All right, working fine. Okay, now inside Sketch, we're going to also update this ball. All right. Okay, so one thing I want to do before we create a bunch of these balls is to write a collision detection code so that the ball will bounce around. And inside update here, we're going to say that if this.pose.x is greater than width, then let's first reverse the direction and also set the position of x to be equals to width. Else, if on the opposite end, this.pose.x is less than 0, then let's reverse it again, but set the position to 0. And we're going to do the exact same thing for the y side. And set width, replace it with height. All right, let's try it. Bounce, 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 bounce. Okay, and for the radius here, when we create a bunch of them, we want the radius to also be different. But before we get there, how about we just create an array called balls, and then let's set num to be, let's do 10 balls. And then we're gonna write a for loop that goes from I equals to 0 to I less than num, I plus plus, and then balls of I will be a new circle here. And instead of setting it at x divided by 2 and height divided by 2, I'm going to declare x to be a random value inside our sketch, so random of width, and then y to be random of height. And then radius, let's do a random value between, how about, we want to make it, okay, we're going to make it small first, so that we see a bunch of these balls, but then afterwards I want to make it big so that instead of seeing the balls themselves, you're going to see these like glowing colors that overlapped with each other. All right, and then we need to put R in here too. Okay, I'm going to copy and paste this so that we can call the two methods here. So balls of I for update, and then balls of I for display. Moments of truth. Ta-da! Nice. Okay, how about we change the radius to 200 and 400? Nice. And I'm going to actually, how about we increase the width to 600 to 700. All right, that's a really nice moving gradient color screensaver. So I hope that you like this. It's very simple, but it actually shows you a little bit of the behind the scene of how to actually access directly the Canvas API. And this way you know that all of these functions that we have been using within P5 actually has the underlying code that actually make things so much easier for us. So we should be really grateful for the people that make this library. So I hope that you enjoyed this one and give it a try.